We want to get a bit of an idea as to what's happening out there with businesses and employers, and certainly a great way to do that is to look at the recruiting space. So let's speak with Simon Boulton from Aequalis Consulting, a finance recruitment firm in Sydney. Simon, thank you so much, and great to have you on board.
Good to see you, Brooke.
You've got great insights into employers thinking at the moment, the kind of activity that you're seeing in the labour market at the moment. How are you actually finding that the change in sentiment that we've seen across all the various business surveys, and there's just generally a change in sentiment now that we know we avoided recession, etc. How are you seeing that actually playing out in the hiring intentions and the staffing planning from businesses?
Well, we've been seeing for a little while that change in sentiment, as you said, but sentiment takes a little while to filter into actual actions, and we're already seeing that those actions are starting to happen. Hiring is starting to occur, growth plans are now being switched on. So it's that change in sentiment changing to hiring action that's become very obvious, even this early in the year.
When do you find that businesses start to look for new staff? Obviously, if people are feeling better, that doesn't mean they just decide they want more people to work for them. There are triggers in businesses, are there?
Yeah, obviously I think each organisation in different sectors have measures that will sort of dictate when they want to hire people. They'll rely on forecasts of growth, needing more people. So I think it's the organisations changing their forecasts of profits, changing their forecasts of revenues that's going to lead to these hiring triggers.
And you're specifically in the financial space, as we just said. You consider that kind of a leading indicator for a lot of the rest of the sectors. So what are you seeing in that space then?
In the finance space, we're finding that clients, as I say, are really starting to make those hiring plans. In finance specifically, some of the cuts that were made through the downturn were probably too deep. So there's some replacement.
Particularly in finance.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there are some replacement hires coming on, but also where there have been redundancies made, organisations looking at upskilling roles and teams that they've had previously. So there's a number of factors that are increasing the hiring activity.
Are businesses struggling with having lost skilled people, as you say? I mean, they just slashed and burned, particularly in the finance industry. I guess part of the challenge is retaining the right people and the best skills within the business. How do you reclaim that ground, if you like, if it's been lost?
It can be very difficult. At an individual employee level, people have started to not mistrust, but there's some tension between employers and employees. So I think this hiring activity is going to be supported by job seekers really switching on their job search. We're already seeing more people register with us for work. We're already finding that clients are looking to get the first mover advantage and try and pick up those skilled, talented individuals that are normally so short in supply. So all of these figures and trends, I think, are really mirrored in the job market at the moment.
And because while we look offshore, and as I said earlier, you know, you've got a 10% unemployment rate in the United States and similar across various parts of Europe, yet here a 5.5% unemployment rate. Skills shortages is probably the issue for us. Are you seeing signs that that's not far off?
That pendulum swings really quickly, Brooke. It swung very quickly the other way, but there's certainly going to be a demand for talent that will see specialist skills very much in demand. You're right, by comparison to the UK and the United States, our industry itself, the recruitment industry, has just taken a bashing. And here it's certainly being cleaned up to a degree, but the forecasts that we're making are for a very good 2010. So I think that the forecast in the job market and trends and activity that we're seeing only support some of these figures that have been released today.
Do you actually see more interest from offshore candidates, given that such a difference in the unemployment rates? So many people looking for work, and Australia's making global headlines about how well we're doing.
Yeah, there certainly is, and there's always been a flow of people from the UK, from Europe, looking to get some money along their backpacking holiday. But we're finding people now actually coming to Australia with the intention of advancing their career, of continuing to get that career training and development that they perhaps can't get in those tighter economies in the UK. So we'd expect to see more employees coming in from offshore. That has to be balanced, I think, with the visa restrictions and also the local job market or the domestic employees versus overseas employees. So that's a difficult balance that I think the immigration departments and the government itself probably need to consider.
So if we're seeing, as you said, quite a bit of activity, or the activity picking up certainly in that job space again at the moment, what's your advice to people out there looking for jobs and out there on the online sites or looking for employment? What are the best kind of strategies for them at the moment with that broader environment in mind?
I think people are, in our industry we say everybody's always looking for a job, but now is certainly the time for people for them to prepare for the job search. So that means looking at some of the tools that they have available. people looking at how their CV is presented, people working on how they might work on interview techniques. Those things have got a little bit rusty through a period of lack of hiring activity. So people really need to get their skills back for job search, and also employers need to think about retraining on interview techniques, interview skills for their hiring managers as well.
So do you think the first port of call for employers then is to be focusing on the staff that they've already got to make sure their skills are improved and to make them, well, you mentioned the negative work environment in some instances?
Yeah, I think that organisations do have to readdress that retention strategy that we've spoken about before. But equally, it's about being opportunistic, being nimble to attract and get those skills when they're able to. So we're already seeing what we would call speculative hiring starting to happen, which again is a very positive sign.
And in the various sectors, really, where's the interest factor going to be through the year?
We always see financial services, property, those sorts of areas have been increasing their activity probably before some of the others. But we're now seeing a sort of broader increase in hiring activity across not only professional services sectors, but also some of the construction, manufacturing sectors as well. So I think it will very much mirror where those results. And during reporting season, it'll be interesting also to see which sectors and which organisations themselves are actually looking like their forecasts are going to be increased.
Yep, absolutely. Simon, thank you very much for your time today from Aequalis Consulting. We appreciate that very much. And I want to just mention the Australian share market's reaction to the S&P ASX 200 jumping up 1.1%, sitting on 49.19 in the wake of those numbers. Now, earlier we spoke to Stephen Kraft. He says through the day, watch how some of those consumer-related shares react to the numbers. They have come in much stronger than expected, of course. Watch stocks like JB Hi-Fi, some of the growth-oriented stocks like Billabong International, which has had a good run recently, and across the media sector. Take a check of those as well to see if we've seen a bit of movement there. Can't see it just on my screen yet, but we've got an update coming up very shortly. Just recapping though, the unemployment rate dropping from 5.6% in November as a revised figure to 5.5%. The economists, as a consensus, were expecting 10,000 jobs to be added, but again, we are